Hello everyone, myself Dr. Vinay Gandal from KMC College Khopoli. Today I'm going to talk about research process and data collection. Dear students, as already we have discussed about research methodology, in last lecture we have discussed about research design. So in entire research process, researcher need to design a appropriate research design which is more suitable to the research study. So whenever researcher need to complete their entire research work with an efficient manner, he must follow the detailed research methodology. So it is very necessary to all of us to understand research process and data collection. So data collection is a very important step in research work. So every researcher need to consider various methods of data collection while doing research work. So dear student, first of all, we are going to learn the common research process which each researcher need to follow while doing any types of research. Already we have been discussed a lot of points with relation to research process, but again I am just going to highlight some points here which express a common research process. So in entire research process, first step is to define research problem. Dear student, researcher need to define a research problem on which he is going to study. So whatever problem he is going to study, first of all, he need to define the correct and specific research problem. Okay. Second step is formulating a research problem. Once research problem has been defined, then researcher need to write a research problem. So formulating research problem is an very important activity of doing research. So while formulating research problem, researcher need to consider many things. So defining and formulating research problem enables the researcher to understand the objectives of the study. Okay, so determination of objectives also based on research problem. So there is a need to formulate accurate research problem on which researcher is going to study. Okay, once research problem has been formulated by the researcher, he need to undertake extensive literature survey. Normally it is known as literature survey. So whatever problem researcher has been identified, he is required to collect various types of literature which are more related to the research problem. So in literature survey, already we have been studied, it is a process of collecting data regarding whatever things and research already happen. So it is the survey of past literature, or it is the survey of or collection of data or understanding the data regarding past research. Okay, so but there must be a extensive literature survey for making our research work better. Okay, once literature survey has been made, the researcher need to develop or formulate hypothesis. So without designing hypothesis, our research work cannot be completed. So formulation of hypothesis is a very important task from a researcher's point of view. And by considering the objectives of research study, the researcher need to formulate 2-3 hypotheses which is mostly depends upon statement of problem. And as you know that it is a predetermined statement about the fact or about the study which researcher need to investigate. Okay, next step is to prepare research design. In last lecture we already discussed about research design. So in research design, researcher need to mention various points. It is a blueprint or pre-plan of whatever research activities researcher need to perform in near future. So there must be a specific research design which is more suitable for entire research work. While drafting research design, researcher need to select sample, that is called as a sampling design. So research also based on sampling design. So whenever researcher need to undertake a study or to investigate the research problem, he need to collect data from various respondents which are depends upon the methods of research. So sampling is a very important task. Okay, once sample size has been designed or identified by the researcher, he is need to consider methods of data collection. Okay, so collection of data is a core part of the study, and it is very necessary for researcher to collect accurate data, and which is mostly based on nature of study or problem statement. Utmost care must be exercised by the researcher while collecting data, because data constitute the foundation on which the superstructure of statistical analysis is depends. Okay, so collection of data is very important from researchers point of view. If the data are inaccurate and inadequate, the whole analysis may be faulty and the decision taken misleading the research work. So to avoid faulty interpretation, faulty analysis, and to avoid misleading information or decision in the research process, researcher need to collect accurate data. Once data has been collected, there is a need to execute the project. So project execution is an important activity from the researcher's point of view. And then researcher need to analyze the data and interpret the data. So once data has been collected, it must be analyzed by using various statistical tools and techniques. So we will discuss all these points in next some lectures also. Once data analysis has been collected, had been made, or interpretation has been made, then researcher need to test hypothesis. So whatever hypothesis or pre-statement defined by the researcher, he need to test it by considering some data. Okay, and after testing hypothesis, there is a step of preparation of the report. So drafting of report is a last step of the research, and researcher need to consider many points while drafting the reports. So these are all the points, some points which already we have been discussed, and some points which we are going to learn in next few lectures. Okay, now we are going to understand data collection. As already I told you, data collection is an important task of research process, and proper care should be taken by the researcher while collecting data, because statistical analysis is based on that type of data, and if it is an inaccurate or inadequate data is collected, it may create some misconception, it may be faulty, and sometimes the decision taken may be misleading. So to avoid such confusions and mistakes, researcher need to collect accurate data. So the question is arise, what actually data collection is? So dear students, data collection is the process of collecting required information to investigate the research problem. So depending upon the nature of research problem, researcher need to collect some data. It may be either primary or secondary. Okay, so whatever data researcher is going to collect, for studying the problem, so whatever process was whatever steps he is going to use to collect the data, that is called as a data collection. And this data collection is normally based on type of research. It is based on what type of research researcher is going to perform. Okay, So there are different types of research. Already we have been discussed about that. So depending on the types of research, the data collection methods also based. Okay. And while collecting data, researcher need to consider various sources of data collection. So there are many sources of data collection, many ways of data collection which researcher is going to use while collecting the data, which is specifically based on types of research. Okay. Now we are going to learn about sources of data collection. Dear student, as you know that there are two methods of data collection or two sources of data collection: primary sources and secondary sources. Now we have to learn about primary sources. Okay. Primary sources is one that itself collect the data. Normally primary sources is a first hand of data collection. It is a primary data is also known as first hand data. There are various ways to collect data like primary data such as observation, interviews, questionnaire, survey. So by using these methods, researcher can collect primary data from the respondents which are selected for the study. So the sometimes researcher may use observation method, interviews method, questionnaire method or survey method to collect the data from the respondents. Okay. So collection of data is also based on or depends upon sample decided by the researcher. So selection of sample is must in data collection. Even in entire research process, there must be a sampling design. So sampling design enables the researcher regarding collection of data or selecting sources of data collection. Okay, so primary data normally shows the data in greater detail. So whatever data researcher is going to collect as a primary data, it gives a detailed idea about the problem study which researcher need to investigate. Okay, so primary data is a first hand data which is not collected by others. It is directly collected from the respondents. Those are selected for the research work. Okay. Next method of source of data collection, that is called as secondary data. Secondary data is one that makes available data which is collected by some other agency, and normally it is highly convenient and it is very easily available to the researcher. There are various sources of secondary data like published books, published articles, reports. Okay, there is a website, you can Google it, you can search it in books, published reports, government reports are there. So whatever past happening are there, and whatever uh, past researches which researchers undertaken, that are to be also considered as a primary data depending upon the nature of current study. Okay, so from available sources of secondary data, researcher may use suitable method to collect secondary data for entire research work. Secondary data normally is the data which is already collected or designed or written by some other researchers, which is made available in published form. It is the data which is easily available to the researcher, and secondary data is also based on types of research, means what type of research researcher is going to perform. As per the nature of research problem, the researcher is required to select the methods of data collection. It may be either secondary or primary data. Okay, so these are the two sources of data collection and which are to be considered by the researcher for undertaking their research work. Thank you.